Hello everyone, thank you for joining this webinar. Today we're going to share some ideas for those of you studying English who want to improve your learning through independent work. You can find the recording of this webinar along with the presentation I'll be using on my blog. You can access it via the link in the video description below. It's the same as the one you can see here on screen, or by scanning the QR code. The aim of this webinar is to provide you with some tips to support your independent learning, to help you learn by yourselves when you're not here at school, in the classroom, whatever, and to help you also make effective use of your time and effort. If you're going to spend some time reading, listening to something in English, then let's make sure that you are using effectively and it's going to be put to good use. And how are we going to do that? I'm going to be mentioning real materials, not really pedagogical materials, because you already have lots of those available. We're going to be using real materials. I'm going to be mentioning mostly free resources and apps you can use on your mobile devices. I'm going to be repeating this idea over and over again. In order for you to remember these new vocabulary or grammar structures you're going to be learning while learning independently, you need to write down your ideas, your expressions, and you need to take notes. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to actually remember anything that comes your way. I'm also going to be mentioning the idea of learning in context. This is something I'm going to be repeating along the webinar. And as I said before, trying to make the most of your probably limited time. Some of the apps I'm going to be mentioning can be found here. These are some things you can do while you're traveling. You can use social media. These are some of the resources I'm going to be mentioning. You will see this icon here. This means that these are some of the tips I'm going to be giving you. So whenever you see a light bulb, this means this is a tip I'm going to be mentioning. I have to say, I have to be very honest from the start. I'm not going to be mentioning anything new that your teachers haven't told you so far. Probably I'm going to be saying essentially the same as your teachers tell you over and over in class. It is true that sometimes when you hear it from somebody else, it becomes then all of a sudden more interesting. Anyway, I'm just going to be happy if you simply put one or two of these tips into practice this very week. So if you can take one or two things with you from this webinar, that's fine. I'll be happy with that. The key idea to remember here is that it doesn't really matter if you are in Zaragoza, wherever you may be, and if it's not an English-speaking country. That really doesn't matter, because you can actually be immersed in the language. You have lots of songs, films, TV shows, radio stations, just a click away. So make sure that you are immersed in the culture and the language. And you can actually use English in your everyday life, as you very well know, starting from very simple things like setting up your mobile phone or your computer in English. That's something you can do. That's something easily done. So come on, why not do that, for example? In that way, that particular vocabulary will come naturally to you. Obviously, you can watch movies or TV shows in English. I'm going to be mentioning some ideas to listen to the radio at home or on the way to work. But something more, ordinary. If you need to find a recipe for something you want to cook, why not look for it in English? So that way you're going to be using exactly the same amount of time, because after all, you need to look for a recipe. Why not look for it in English? Or now that I mention it, any internet search or on Wikipedia, just do it in English instead of in Spanish or your mother tongue. If you need to find any YouTube tutorials or TikTok video, whatever, try and find it in English. Or why not, if you are on social media, if you have any social media profiles, why not follow, I don't know, institutions, media outlets, mass media, newspapers, TV channels, or celebrities on social media in English. That can come in really handy, I have to say. Okay, first things first, I think it is essential for you to know where you stand, what your actual level of English is. As you know, this word does not mean current. Your actual level of English means your real level of English. Because it doesn't really matter if you are studying at A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, A1, whatever. As you probably know, our different, skills may stand at different levels. So, for example, my comprehension, my reading or listening comprehension might be at C1, but perhaps my production is at B2 level. So there are some tools that can help me. Well, there's my teacher who can actually tell me where I stand, of course, and they have their professional criterion. You can also use some resources that can help you assess your real level of English. As you know, our studies and our curriculum is structured around the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, the A1, A2, B1, B2, etc. levels. There is this tool called Dialang or something like that, which was devised by people in European institutions, which can give you a very accurate picture of your actual level of English. You can scan it here and you can see how it works here. The interface looks something like this. It's a website that you can use, and it's a rather long test, but as I say, it's very, very accurate. So you can, if you use it, you don't need to install it. You can just use it online. And if you start on a Monday and then you keep doing it on a Friday, it doesn't really matter because it can save your details. Just write down a code they'll give you and you can do it on different sessions. So just choose English and you can test your listening comprehension, your writing, your reading, your speaking, and your grammar. Okay? And as I say, it's very accurate. Some of the tests might sound or might look a bit peculiar. You might wonder why you're asked to do some things, but trust me, it's very, very accurate. So that can help you identify where you need to improve or what you need to work more on. In this blog post, you can also see some other tools that perhaps might be interesting for you. There's one by Cambridge University called Write and Improve, which can do two things. Number one, it can help you identify your level for writing. So they will give you a series of tasks, so you can just do one writing task, and they will tell you if you've produced at B2, C1, B1, A2 level, whatever. It's also very interesting because they suggest many different tasks, which many times are very similar to the ones we may suggest here at school. So, as I say, it can come in quite handy, actually. There's another one called Speech Ace. Speech Ace has a free version and then a premium one. Just use the free version and that'll be enough. And it can help you. It will assess your speaking. So it will ask you to speak into the microphone, it will ask you a series of questions, and it will assess your pronunciation, fluency, the vocabulary you've used, and the grammar you've used. Okay, there's a similar one by Cambridge called Speak and Improve, but at the time it's not foolproof, it's not 100% accurate. So you can just give it a try if you want. But these two are far more reliable. You can trust these two far more. They're much better. Okay, I love traveling. I'm sure you do as well. And I'm sure that you have either heard this expression or you may have said this expression yourselves. Many people say that you can only learn English if you travel to an English-speaking country. And I'm not sure if you completely agree, disagree, or completely disagree. I have to say that for me, it could be a disagree. I disagree with this. If you travel to an English-speaking country, that's excellent. That's great. And you can learn a lot, actually, if you really talk to native speakers of a language. And it is true, you are immersed in the culture and you can see lots of signs and you have to read lots of things. But as I say, for travel to actually be worth your while, you need to do something else. You have to go the extra mile. Because probably if you travel as a tourist, what's going to happen is that the only meaningful interaction you're going to have is going to be with the cashier in the supermarket. And these days, you don't even have to talk to the cashiers because probably you're not going to even meet a human person. You're just going to go to the self-checkout and just listen to a machine saying thank you for buying at whatever the supermarket may be. So yes, you might spend lots and lots of money and not talk to many people. So what can you do if you travel to an English-speaking country to actually, have a conversation with native speakers? You have different possibilities. One of them is the so-called International Greeter Association. Greeters are volunteers. This is an association I love. I've met some of these volunteers, some of these greeters in the UK and in France, and I've always had great experiences. Let me tell you about it. This is an organization that you can find, in very many places in the world. And the idea is that these volunteers agree to show people around, not just their city, but specifically around their neighborhoods. So, for example, if I became one of those volunteers, I would show the area where I live, and I would explain not just about the landmarks or the most important sites of my area, but also about ordinary life and what people usually do and, as I say, everyday problems and how people live around. You have to bear in mind that this is just one volunteer, and if it's just you traveling alone, it can be just you, or it can be a group of up to, 5 or 6 people, but it is your group. So if you're traveling with your family or friends, this volunteer is going to be available just for you and the people traveling with you. Usually it depends on places and volunteers, but it's usually about 1 or 2 hours. So you're going to be spending 1 or 2 hours with this volunteer, showing you around. So you're going to be doing some sightseeing, but talking, speaking, and listening to a native speaker for 1 or 2 hours. You can ask them questions. They can ask you questions, of course. And these people tend to be really, really nice because after all, they're volunteering to do this. On principle, it's something free, something you can do for free. The organization, the website says that you mustn't pay any money to the volunteer. You are invited to contribute something to the organization, but that's totally up to you. Okay? So yes, as I say, this is something I recommend because it's going to help you improve your English, definitely. Something else I can recommend is using a website like this. For example, you might be familiar with, it's everywhere in the world. It's just an event manager. So if you are organizing something, you can just advertise it through this website. And you as a customer, you can choose, for example, if you're traveling on a specific date, you can pick the dates when you're going to be in London or in New York, whenever it might be. You can choose if you want to do a free activity or a paid activity, but you can choose just free. And then you can choose somehow the area of interest. So for example, if you are into music, so you can choose music, pick a date and something free. So you have lots of free concerts or choirs or something like that. You can attend conferences, you can attend, many times businesses advertise taster lessons for something. So you can just take this one, first lesson, a taster lesson. And even if you're not going to, attend the course any longer, but at least you've had one of these first sessions in English given to you. Sometimes there are lots of walks around parks with somebody else because people just want to socialize. So you can just take a walk around, Kensington Gardens with other people and talk to them while you are, going for a stroll around Kensington Gardens. So again, this is a very interesting idea for you to do something and not just be a tourist. I always say that when you're traveling, you can always spot a language teacher because the language teacher is the person who's taking photographs of random things like signs in the streets, like, post boxes, or, for example, signs on the tube, on the underground or on a train. These are pictures I've taken on the tube, for example, simply because I like the pronunciation and the pun. Roam like home, because this is the same sound being pronounced. And I liked it, and I thought that perhaps I could use it for my lessons. And this is a pun, because these are words that sound exactly the same, but are spelled differently and mean something else. Fair's fair, fair's fair. So I like this particular bit, so I take pictures. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to act as if you were a language teacher. And if you see anything interesting while you're traveling, however random it might look, just take a picture of these signs, ads, or puns, or anything that might call your attention and you think might help you improve your English. Definitely write down any vocabulary, any expressions you may overhear. If you are on a train and you hear native speakers using, a nice vocabulary expression, something that calls your attention, or something that reminds you of something you heard in class, you were taught in class. Just make a note of it, write it down, okay? Something else you can do, for example, there are lots of free newspapers, especially in big cities, there are lots of free newspapers around. So take one and perhaps take a picture of news with interesting expressions or with grammar structures. That's something that you can take home and it can remind you of this particular expression. Now then, let's have a look at some ideas to improve your reading comprehension and also how reading can help you improve all other skills. Probably you might think that your reading comprehension is rather good actually already, so you don't need to do much. However, all the input you get from reading, for example, is going to help you improve your output. Both your written production and your spoken production, your speaking, your writing and your speaking are going to benefit from your reading. Why should you read? Well, to begin with, to understand what you're reading and for you to be quicker at understanding what you're reading. Definitely to widen your range of language, to prevent you from using the same basic words all the time. definitely to improve your written and spoken production, as I was just saying before. Why not to be up to date with news and what's happening in the world? So definitely, if you read newspapers, magazines, if you're on social media, yeah, you can be up to date with the news. And absolutely read for pleasure, just to enjoy the language and to enjoy the content of what you're reading. And how should you read? That's an essential tip. Definitely, as I'm going to be repeating ad infinitum, taking notes. Okay? You should have a notebook next to you. It doesn't really matter if it's a notebook, if you're using a tablet, and I write lots of things on my iPad, so it doesn't really matter, but just write it down, take notes, jot down any interesting expressions to widen, as I was saying, your range of vocabulary. And don't just think of words you don't know. If you see something which it's the first time you come across, that's excellent. Write it down if you find it interesting. If you think you could incorporate that into your vocabulary, sure, go for it. But also highlight words that you recognize, but probably you wouldn't have used. This is called, your passive vocabulary. If there are things you recognize, you know this word, you've seen it before, or perhaps you can understand from the context, but perhaps it's not something you could have used, then that's something you could make a note of as well. I have to say, sometimes students may worry about, understanding every single word or every single expression. So no, there's no need for you to understand everything. If a word, if an expression, if a bit of text is not relevant, okay, then forget about it. There's no need for you to understand every single word, because you can use the context to guess the meaning of a word, okay? As I said, what you need to do is to write down any interesting expression that you may find. However, you have to do it in context. If you simply write the word and then the Spanish translation, I'm sorry to say this is not going to help you, because it might mislead you. It might give you a wrong impression. Because words have many different meanings, so depending on the context, it might be one thing or another, or it might be used differently. So when you write it down, write the full sentence, write it in the context, or write what it was about, in what context it was being mentioned. Okay? Some other tips I can give you regarding reading would be for you to read the text again, some weeks later, in some weeks' time, or maybe in a couple of months' time, because when you read it for a second or third time, it will all come back to you. All those interesting expressions will become more and more familiar when you face them again. Another tip would be for you to read different text types. Not just newspaper articles, not just fiction books, because that way, you'll be exposed to different types of language, but also you will find it more motivating, probably. And finally, another thing you have to bear in mind is that you choose texts that are appropriate for your level. If they are too easy, if they are lower than your level, you will understand them, no problem, but they won't provide you with the extra one you need to help you improve your English. If they are too complicated, you will be, probably disappointed that you can't understand it, and it won't help you either. So, as I say, try and get, level appropriate texts for you. As you probably know, in our school library, we have lots and lots of resources that are arranged by level. And we have lots of books, but we also have films and magazines. So just pop into our library and I'm sure you'll find something to suit your needs. There are many text types you can choose from. You can read some of these so-called pedagogical texts, like the ones that you can find on your textbooks, or perhaps some guided readers, those readers that are somehow simplified and adapted for your level. You can read anything on social media. You can read the news on newspapers, magazines. You can read literary texts, of course. If you want to have a look at some possible news and text types, you can have a look at some ideas here on this link. This is a compilation that I made some time ago for newspapers and online magazines. There's something very interesting you can do, which is listen to a book being read. That is an audiobook, as you very well know. As you know, there are businesses that allow you to buy their audiobook versions. Sometimes you can be lucky and you can find some very well-known books being read. The audiobook version can be found on YouTube. So these are just a couple of examples. In this case, read by actresses like Kate Winslet or Elizabeth Moss, the protagonist on the TV version of The Handmaid's Tale, for example. So you can try and see if you're lucky, and listening to the book being read in whatever shape or form is something which is going to help you quite a lot, significantly, because that way you're going to be reading and you're going to be focusing on pronunciation as well. If you go to the school's page, to the school's website, you can find, if you go to English, idiomas, English, and you can find a section here called, links or something like that, and I think there is. So this is something we prepared last year for our students. So you can find a compilation of or a selection of things you can read and many other resources that I'm going to be mentioning later on, especially for you. Let's have a look now at some ideas to improve your listening comprehension. Just like with reading, the more you listen to something, the more useful it's going to be for you and your production. I just love listening to things. I'm not just talking about my experience of learning English and, keeping my English up to date as a teacher. I'm thinking of other languages I might have learned. So this has been really useful to me when I was trying to improve my French or preparing for my French exams, for example. Again, how should you listen to things? Listen to things, but taking notes. I can't stress this enough. Because if you take notes in whatever shape or form, it doesn't really matter, this is going to help you to widen your range of vocabulary. I'm just repeating myself. And then, again, take notes and write down words you don't know, words that you're not familiar with, but also words that you recognize, but you couldn't have used because they're not part of your active vocabulary at the time. Exactly like with reading, okay? And as I said before with reading, listen again to that same extract in the future, because that way those interesting expressions will come back to you in the same context, and that will help you remember and somehow internalize those expressions. We're just so fortunate these days to have lots and lots of resources available. They're just a click away, and one of them is just the ability to listen to the radio in a very easy way. You can listen to digital radio. These are a couple of very nice apps and websites. TuneIn is something you can use online on a computer. It also has an app, so you can use your mobile device if you want to. And you also have this website here, Radio Garden. This is TuneIn. What it does is it allows you to choose the language you're learning, to look for podcasts or by location, and it shows you different radio stations, and you can choose the type of program you want to listen to, and you can listen to something being broadcast live or something which was already broadcast some time before. Do a podcast on. This is Radio Garden, and what you can do with Radio Garden, if you remember, when you were trying to tune in a radio station in your car, you had to dial and try to find the different radio stations. So this is what you do, but geographically. So you move the cursor around, the geographical places, and it shows you lots and lots of different radio stations, from local radio stations, music radio stations, you name it. You have lots and lots of all these little dots are the different radio stations you can listen to, and it's just very, very interesting. So for example, if you're just doing the cleaning around the house, if you're cooking, or if you're driving, you can listen, tune in, or just use this on your device and listen to whatever is playing on the radio. In this case, it could be live radio. Okay, but both very interesting options, and listening to any of these options will allow you to listen to these types of shows, those phone-ins where listeners phone in the radio station and they share their views, or they suggest songs, something like that. You can listen to the news, you can listen to current affairs or to social matters. And I don't know if all of these somehow remind you of the kinds of texts you may find in exams. Because actually this is what you can find typically, especially as if you're taking B2 or C1 or definitely C2 exams, you're going to be faced with real materials coming from radio stations. So this can come in really, really handy. These days, podcasts have become, all the rage. They are very, very popular, and they are a very interesting a very interesting option, definitely. Something very good about podcasts is that you can choose the one or the ones that are perhaps suited to your taste. You can always find, I'm sure, a podcast you're going to find interesting. And you can also choose to listen to a shorter podcast, perhaps a 5-6 minute podcast, or to something longer if you have some more time on your hands. So you have a wide variety of podcasts to choose from, okay? Again, as I said before, if you go to the school's website, you go to the English department, you have these, links. So we have come up with podcasts that you can listen to if you click here, and they're arranged by level. Selection of podcasts. Some time ago, because I've traditionally taught C1 and C2 courses, I came up with a selection of podcasts for these levels. You can find them here, and they are arranged by topic, and then within each topic they are arranged by the variety of English that is mainly spoken. If you want to see this compilation, you can find it here. That's the link. You can also scan the QR code here if you want to have a look at this compilation. As I say, it's mainly targeted at C1, C2. This is the compilation that I mentioned on the school's website, so you have some ideas here. Okay. And as you can see, they are arranged by level. If you want to access this, you have the QR code in here. The BBC, I just love the BBC. I can't use it enough. I can't get enough of the BBC actually, and so should you, definitely. If you can only use one thing please do anything BBC related or BBC produced. They do have some very useful podcasts. If you are at A2, B1, you have these short podcasts called, for example, The English We Speak, or 6-Minute English, 6-Minute Grammar, 6-Minute Vocabulary. So just listen to them. They are very short, obviously, but they are very current. They use, very contemporary vocabulary, very current expressions. If you can, you could also follow their BBC Learning English profile on social media, because they have very active social media accounts and they're quite interesting as well. So yeah, definitely, if you have a chance, just follow them or have a look at their podcasts, because they're quite nice. You can also browse, if you go to BBC Sounds, that's where you can find all their podcasts and all their radio shows. So they are arranged by category, so you can browse the different sections and see if there's something you can find of any interest to you. I'm sure you will. What about social media? Definitely. There's always something you can find. Anything helps. Every little helps. If you try and follow, media outlets, like newspapers, TV channels, radio stations. I'm sure this is, for example, the Irish National TV and radio station. This is a British newspaper. This is a British news channel. So as you can see, you have, they're talking about current affairs, they're talking about the news, and they will provide you with interesting vocabulary and very, current vocabulary, and definitely connected to the real world. So I do find following social media profiles of media outlets really useful. What about songs? Some people may feel that, songs are just silly love songs, they're not really useful. This is an activity I came up with some years ago, because some people complain that perhaps, using songs in the classroom is just a waste of their time. So I came up with a list of expressions that tend to appear in most well-known songs, and I invented a pretend love letter from someone to their former partner, to their ex-husband or ex-wife or whatever, and so they had to fill the gaps with a suitable word. And I have to say, those students, that particular group, and the person complaining about the songs didn't find the exercise so easy. And they agreed that actually, these expressions were not just, expressions you can find in songs, but they found these useful for many different contexts. Okay? So yes, I do believe that songs can help you improve your English. I know they helped me improve my French, definitely. So what you can do, what I tend to do, for example, I have Spotify playlists based on or arranged by topic. So I have some songs about food and restaurants, some songs about sports and games, some songs about crime and the law, for example. So they are somehow thematic playlists. Something you can definitely do if you're listening to a song on Spotify or any other, streaming platform. Typically, they provide you with the lyrics to songs. So yes, definitely when you're listening to the song, turn on the lyrics. That's, it can help you focus on vocabulary, absolutely. Probably you may be familiar with song finder apps like Shazam, for example. You're listening to a song, you don't know what song it is, so you press Shazam and it will identify what song it is. There's another similar app called SoundHound, which does exactly the same. You know how to use it here. you can find it here. SoundHound will identify the song. It will provide you with the lyrics to the song. But there is something else you can do. It will identify the song from the actual song being played, but it can also identify the song if you sing into the device. Okay, so sometimes you may have a bit of song on your head and you can't find it, so you may sing it a bit and then it will tell you, it may identify what song you're talking about. But you can simply just do it for fun. Even if you know exactly the song it is, you can just, if you have a couple of minutes on your hand, you can, sing into the app and see if it recognizes what you're pronouncing, for example. You could also hum into it. If you don't know the lyrics, you could just la 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 la. Okay, you can hum into the app and it might recognize the song after all. That's AI for you. Anyway, that's a very nice app and it's free so far. As you know, of course, many times original artists, when they upload their videos to YouTube, they may have, if it's the original music video, you may have the lyrics for you to read as the song's playing. And sometimes, increasingly, especially very famous singers upload their music videos and their official lyric videos. So you can play those as well. Something else you can do these days is to watch online television. Some channels might be a bit more difficult to watch, but anyway, I'm sure you will find something that you might like. This is a website that you can use to, very much like Radio Garden. So with Radio Garden, you can listen to live radio. So with Free Inter, you can watch live TV. However, some TV channels actually broadcast live on YouTube, or perhaps just share some clips after they have been broadcast. But anyway, every little helps, as I say. So this is what you can find on Free Inter. Just choose the country, choose the TV station, okay? And this is just an example. Sky News broadcasts lots of their programs live, so you can just go to YouTube and listen to the news live from there. But again, whatever you do, whether you're listening to a song, whether you're watching TV, just make a note of it. If you see any interesting expression, just write them down on a piece of paper, on your notebook, on your computer, digital notebook, whatever. Something else you can do, for example, if you're watching live TV, you can take a screenshot of what is being said. If you have a subtitles, for example, or if you're watching a TV show or a film, then you take a screenshot. You can see that way, you can see the context where that particular expression appeared. And as I said, context is essential. I've mentioned TV shows or films. I'm sure that whenever you think of an evening watching a TV show or a film, you may think you need to get your popcorn ready. You may think that you need your sofa and your blanket ready, but you need something else. What? Yes, you guessed it. Your notebook. Okay? So yes, you can sit on your sofa with your blanket, that's totally fine, but you need to write down any interesting expressions you might come across on the TV show you're watching or on the film you're watching. Then, very silly question. If you want to improve your English, are you going to watch it dubbed into Spanish? Definitely not. Are you going to watch it with subtitles in Spanish? Sorry, don't do it. Even if your English is not, at B2 or C1, C2, whatever, still make the effort and watch with subtitles in English. Okay? Some people might say that if you're watching it in English with subtitles in English, then you're not improving your listening comprehension. And you may have a point. It is true that probably your eyes are going to read the subtitle and you're not going to improve your listening comprehension as much. You're still going to be improving it to some extent, but you will be, just to compensate, you're going to be improving your reading comprehension as well. You're going to be focusing on vocabulary and you're going to be associating the spelling and pronunciation of words and structures. So believe me, this is still a very good idea. If you only want to practice your listening comprehension, then don't use any subtitles at all. But if you simply want to improve your English overall, yeah, that's a perfectly sound idea. That's useful still. These are just some ideas of things you can do, because watching a full film or a TV show might be time consuming, because definitely you need some time on your hands. But you can watch some film trailers. If you only have some 5 minutes, you can have a look at this website, for example, where you can find trailers for films that are being shown at the time, subtitled in English. This is not targeted at learners of English. This is for people with hearing loss, but it doesn't really matter. To us, you have the link to the trailer subtitled in English. If you want some suggestions of films that I find interesting for learners of English, you can click on this link here. And this is just a compilation of actors and, I called it speaking voices I like. Actors who I find, interesting from a linguistic point of view, because their enunciation is very clear, because you can learn lots from them, or because they use very nice language. So anyway, these are just my suggestions for you. As for TV shows, again, you have in here some ideas from many different English-speaking countries. You have some ideas of TV shows that might help you improve your English, some TV shows I've been watching lately. And you also have a link here to a site that I've been compiling for some years now, where I illustrate some discourse markers, some of these conversation expressions that teachers invite you to use when you're having your interactions and your, natural conversations in English, illustrated by clips from TV shows. So if you want to have a look, you have lots and lots of clips now, and many of them come from very recent TV shows and classic and very well known and loved TV shows as well. You have some examples in here. For example, to illustrate how to use this expression, you have a clip from Happy Valley, from Readers with Martin Freeman. I don't know, you can just have a look here. This is just an example. Or another expression that I love in English. Well, fair enough. This is something that is widely used in the UK. So, for example, you can watch this short clip here from a TV show called Good Omens. That's a lovely show, anyway. And this character uses this expression here. And I think you can get an idea of how to use it in a natural way. Again, remember, whatever you do, whatever you're watching, whatever you're listening to, make a note of it on a notebook, digitally, or take a screenshot and keep all your screenshots together. If you're interested in, culture and, improving your knowledge about a wide variety of topics, you might be interested in TED Talks. You have a link here. There are some of them they're called Must-See TED Talks for Kids. Even if you're not a kid, of course, but these tend to be perhaps shorter and the language tends to be a bit more simple than, standard TED Talks. So you can have a look at these 2 links here because you can still see some interesting things for you. Okay. And one of the nice things about watching these on their actual website, not just on YouTube, is that, okay, you can watch the TED Talk here, you have subtitles and you have a transcript. You can click on the transcript and it will take you to the precise place in the video where this person, says the sentence. Or you can alternatively just watch them on YouTube. It doesn't really matter. Now, let's have a look at some ideas on how to improve your writing skills. What I'm going to be mentioning now probably has to do more with an exam situation, okay? When you're given a writing task, don't just answer the question, because some people just, they think of a content, but they don't realize that what they have to do is that they have to show their level and show off. I'll be talking about this in a minute, okay? But remember that this exam or this particular writing task is for you to show mastery of a language at that particular level. So you have to show it. It's not just a question of answering the question. You can answer some questions in a very basic way and it will not probably, give you the certificate you're looking for, okay? When you're writing, don't think in your native language. If you're Spanish, don't think in Spanish or whatever. Think, what do I know about this topic in English? What vocabulary do I have? What structures can I use? And instead of thinking, what phrase do I want to say? What sentence do I want to say? No, think, what idea do I want to express? That's the key thing for you to bear in mind. Think of the idea and think of the language resources you have to express that idea. Okay? Remember that this is not a test on your opinion or your knowledge on anything. This is just a way for you to show that you have communication strategies and mastery of a language. Okay? And then I can't stress the importance of writing a draft enough. Okay? I know that many people, they just feel sick and tired of us teachers telling you to write your draft before actually writing the real piece of writing. It doesn't have to be the full writing. No, definitely not, because you don't have enough time to write both things, both the draft and then the neat version. No. But just think of a plan, think of a structure, and guide the text in the direction you want it to go. Otherwise, you might start writing something and you may not know how to end the sentence. Or you may have expressed an idea and then you think of something excellent which should have gone before the idea you've just written. Okay? So please don't underestimate the importance of writing a draft before you actually start writing. I always talk about the wow effects. You know what teachers, what examiners want to do when we're reading your writing tasks? We want to be impressed. We want to be in awe of your writing. We want to go, wow, that was good. Okay? And perhaps you think that a red pen is a teacher's favorite tool. I'm sorry to say no. I use lots of red pens along the year, but I don't want to do it. I want to spend lots of green pens. Okay? And I do use them whenever I see something, very nice, a grammar structure that has been used correctly, something that has been used in class and then it's shown in a writing task or a vocabulary expression or whatever. I underline it, I highlight it green because it's very good. So I'm saying, yes, well done. Or well used something, and I'm impressed that you're using that. So teachers want to be impressed. We want to be in awe of you, and we want to use lots of green pens and, just a bit of red pens, every now and then. We all make mistakes, but, less red pen and more of a green pen, definitely. And then I know that some students, don't really pay attention to teachers when they say, this is your suggested task. Please submit this writing task for you to practice. Some students do, and they practice a lot, but some others don't, because they feel that perhaps, maybe their speaking is good enough, so they think that they are fluent enough and the writing is just going to work in the same way. I'm so sorry. Speaking is not writing. Writing is not speaking. And regardless of how good your speaking might be, that might not be the case with your writing. Remember that you need to use appropriate punctuation, that you need to group ideas into paragraphs. If I ever see just a writing task which is made up of just one paragraph and lots of commas and very, very few stops or full stops, then something's wrong. Okay? There needs to be, cohesion and coherence between the paragraphs. Coherence has to do with the content, the relation, the cause and consequence connection, or the problem solution relation between the ideas in the paragraphs. And the cohesion has to do with how effectively you're using your linking words to connect the sentences within the paragraph and the ideas between paragraphs. Definitely, because you're practicing, you need to self-correct your grammar and vocabulary. When you finish, before you submit your writing task, have a look, reread it, proofread it for mistakes. And then, besides your self-correction, you can also have a look and you can ask one of your classmates, for example, to have a look at your piece of writing and see if they understand what you mean to say. Perhaps they don't need to correct it as such, okay? They might just spot one or two mistakes, for example, or they might say, oh, this is not very clear. But especially to see if somebody else understands what you mean to say. Because sometimes teachers tell you that, we might say, oh, this idea is not very clear. And you might think that it's, because we don't want to understand what you're saying. But maybe if you see that other students wouldn't understand what you're saying, you will see what they mean. Okay. I've mentioned the importance of linking words. This is a chart I came up with some time ago, and you have the most usual linking words, well, in English or for writing tasks in English anyway, and they are arranged by their function, if they are cause, consequence, obstacle, adding information. The colors have to do indicate the level at which they are typically introduced. So if you see something blue, it means that they are typically introduced at B1. If you see them orange, they are typically introduced at C1. Green means they are introduced at B2. So you can have an idea of, if you're using lots of blue linking words and you are a C1 student, perhaps it means that your level is very basic or you're using very low level linking words. You can have a look at the chart. It's here. You can find it scanning this QR code or on the link here. You can also have a look at what I call scary mistakes. There are some mistakes that teachers find over and over in our students' productions, and they shouldn't be there because they are low-level mistakes. So they are scary because when we see those mistakes, we go, oh my God, this shouldn't be happening. Okay? So if you click on this link here, you will find a different list for B1, B2, or C1 and upwards. The kinds of mistakes that you shouldn't be making if you are at any of these levels. I tend to joke with my students and I tell them that every time a student needs to look up a word and they go to Google Translate or ChatGPT or Google or whatever, I get one more grey hair or I get wrinkles or something like that. No, if you need to look up a word, I'm sorry to say, you need to go to a good old-fashioned dictionary. We still have paper dictionaries. I'm not sure how many of you actually use them. They're okay. I have to say, for years and years now, I've been using online dictionaries and they're excellent because they retain the essence, all the positive qualities of a dictionary, but they also include the pronunciation and you can listen to the word being pronounced, which is excellent. Okay, and they are much more interactive, of course. So yes, by all means, you can use an online dictionary, but it needs to be a dictionary, okay? I know that many of you could just go for a bilingual dictionary, an English into Spanish, Spanish into English. If you are a B2 student, a C1 or C2, absolutely, you need to use a monolingual, just an English into English dictionary, okay? Because that's how your brain should be working now. If I were you, I would make sure that you're picking the word you need. Sometimes it may not be the first option you find in a dictionary, okay? Okay? Something to bear in mind as well is that dictionaries, especially online dictionaries, include these days the option of a thesaurus. Because you may find, this is a very silly example, but if you want to say this, and you can see you have several possibilities here. So perhaps you're talking about, playing poker. So, okay, this could be okay. But if you're talking about, writing a letter to somebody, it can't be playing card, or you know what I mean. Or if you're talking about a restaurant, you can't say, card when you mean the menu. As I say, this is a very silly example, but you can see a synonym dictionary, okay? So, especially if you are, if you're taking C1, if you're taking C2, you need to widen the range of your language. You need to stop using very basic words and, show a wider range of language. So instead of using basic words, just look them up in the thesaurus and see if you can find some more enriching options. Okay? Let's move on now to speaking and pronunciation. Again, I've mentioned dictionaries and how useful it is that you can listen to the word being pronounced, when you look it up in the dictionary. That's excellent. And you have British versions, American versions, for example, here in the Cambridge Dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary does the same. Okay. You have some other possibilities as well, because sometimes there are things you can't find in a dictionary. For example, people's names, place names, or local expressions, perhaps. You can't find that, or brands. How do you say this in English? How do you say this in English? So what you can do, you can go, for example, to this website here, Forvo. This was first created by a group of actually Spanish people. Anyway, this is a database of words being pronounced by native speakers who, they volunteer to record themselves pronouncing things because people have a lot of free time on their hands, and that's just excellent for us. Useful tool is this one here, Jooglish. What Jooglish does is it takes you to YouTube videos and it takes you specifically to the moment in the video where this word you're looking up is being pronounced. So you can listen to lots and lots of different videos pronouncing this word for you. Again, that's really, really useful. So if you want to know how to pronounce this German word, for example, you can just type it on Forvo and you can find here lots of different people pronouncing the word. And as you can see, it's someone from Germany, but someone from Austria as well. So they might pronounce it differently. The same goes for English. If you want to know how to pronounce this place name in English, again, you have different people here. Some of them are British, some are American, or from some other places in the world. So you can play these clips here and you can see how the word Greenwich is pronounced. Okay? So this is a very useful tool. Something else you can do, you can listen to or you can use the so-called immersive readers or text-to-speech tools. Immersive readers are designed for people with some sort of learning disability. If people need to listen to the words being pronounced or have different fonts on a screen, so that's a matter, okay? What you can do with an immersive reader, you can just copy and paste the text and they will pronounce it for you. You can press play, so they will read the text for you. Sometimes if you click on a word, if it's something you can show with a picture, for example, if you click on the word dogs, it will open a new window and you will find a picture of a dog and you can listen to the word dog being pronounced. Okay, and you can change the font, so you can have a different font. You can change the background as well, so that might be, useful for you, especially if you know that your pronunciation needs improving. Yeah, definitely, that's a very good idea. This one, for example, is part of a new Office 365 versions. If you have a newer version of Word, PowerPoint, etc., or if you use Word Online, you can find this particular immersive reader. That's the main idea. You have some other tools, text-to-speech tools, where, as the very name says, if you copy and paste text, it will read it for you. The artificial intelligence tool will read that text for you. So you have some ideas here of free tools that are going to do that for you. If you paste some text, they will read the text for you. And you have how to use immersive readers in here. Something else you can do, I know you're going to hate it, you're going to hate me, but you can record yourselves speaking. It's a very tough experience. I don't like to listen to myself. I don't like my English, but I can tell you, I hate listening to myself in Spanish, so it doesn't really matter. But, just get over the the shame and listen to yourselves, because it will help you identify problems you might have, or it will help you improve, definitely, trust me. While you're doing things around the house or just going on about your day, you can talk to yourself in English, you can think in English. So instead of saying, pues tengo que ir a hacer la compra, tengo que llevar el coche al taller, you can think in English and you can say, I need to do the shopping, I need to remember to buy this and that, I have to take the car to the garage, whatever. As you know, there are some speaking clubs around the city, there are some bars and pubs you can meet native speakers and just people who are learning English. And these days, some of you I know are getting together here at school to have a chat before classes or after class or whatever. That's a very nice idea. So yeah, you can join one of these speaking clubs, and everything's going to contribute, everything's going to help you actually. Okay. You can also take part in so-called language exchanges online. There are lots and lots of websites that allow you to say, okay, I'm a native Spanish speaker, I'm improving my English, so I'm going to, I want to meet a partner to exchange somehow our learning experiences. So you can speak a bit of English and they will help you improve your English, and they will speak Spanish to you in return, and you can help them improve their Spanish. As I say, you have lots of different places, lots of websites here. This is just one of them. You say what your native language is, the language you're practicing, and where you're from, your age, and you can find, different options here. Okay? These are real people. These days, you can also talk to AI robots, AI bots. You have some ideas here. You have this website called Pi. This is something you can install on your mobile phone as well, or you can use ChatGPT or Gemini, Copilot, whatever. What I would suggest doing is, before you start your conversation, give the AI tool an instruction and tell it to correct any mistakes you might make along the conversation. So that way you can give some sort of feedback, and it will tell you if you're making mistakes, if they don't understand something, or they will correct things that need correcting. So that's something you can do as well. As you know, these days ChatGPT is a tool you can talk to, and it can talk to you as well. So I don't know, just give it a try. You can find some more tools to help you improve your pronunciation and your phonological control here. Remember that at the beginning I mentioned some tools to help you assess your real level of English, and you have this tool here, SpeechAce, which can assess your level of speaking, or perhaps even speak and improve here, but this is probably the best one. I'm just going to give you some further tips for your speaking exams or your oral exams, okay? And I'm going to say something very similar to what I said when I talked about writing. When you're speaking, and typically for B1, B2, C1 and C2, you have some time to think about what you're going to say. So think about expressions which will make you look good somehow. Try to showcase and show your level, because you might say correct things at a very basic level, but perhaps they are not, good enough, or they won't show your level. For your individual task, for your presentation or monologue, some people may call it, remember to use so-called discourse markers. So when you start, say something like "to begin with," say things like "needless to say," depending on your level, okay? Your teachers will tell you about this, but try and use these expressions to separate your ideas and to help the people listening to you, follow your presentation. And then as for interaction, remember that if you're having a conversation with somebody else, it needs to be a real conversation where you ask questions, where you listen to what the other person said and reply according to what the other person said. It's not just one monologue. It's not just person A speaking blah, 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 what do you think? And then person B speaking blah, 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 what do you think? And having no connection whatsoever. It's a real conversation, and it should be as natural as possible. We've been talking about vocabulary quite extensively so far. I'm just going to give you some further tips on how to improve your vocabulary, which is essential because it is the basis for your production. Well, definitely you need to understand some vocabulary, but you need it as the basis to be able to write and speak. I believe we mentioned already the difference between your active and your passive vocabulary. Your passive vocabulary is made up of all the words and expressions you can recognize. So you might have seen before. So when you see it, you recognize these particular expressions. However, your active vocabulary is made up of all the words you can actually use when you're speaking or when you're writing. So many times the challenge is for you to incorporate as many of these passive vocabulary expressions into your active vocabulary. I've also mentioned that you need to memorize vocabulary in contexts. Typically, just a list of words might be useful to memorize if there was a vocabulary test. So you could memorize these words and then the following day you will have forgotten them. But if you really want to have, meaningful context and, learning that lasts in time, you should write down those expressions in a sentence, in a context of use. Okay. And as we've been saying, you can get lots of vocabulary from, written texts, articles, films, TV shows, songs, radio shows, you name it. You have lots and lots of options. These are just some ideas of things you can do. As I've been saying, you can take notes on a physical notebook, or if you want, on a Google document or in a Google Keep document, whatever. Just use whatever you want, but something you can go back to at any point you may need to go back to, okay? Not just a single piece of paper that you're going to lose, you're going to misplace, and you want to know where to find it. You can create your own flashcards, like physical cards where you have on one side the word on one side and on the other side of a card the image or the definition. So you can do them digitally using that. You can have some mind maps. I'll show you some later. Or you can use some visual dictionaries. I'll show you one in a minute. If you're remotely interested, you can also check how many words you actually know in English using this website, and it will tell you, depending on the number of words you actually know, it will tell you, if you are an intermediate speaker, advanced, basic, whatever. It's just for fun, but again, it might help you, assess how good your vocabulary is. This is just an example of a visual dictionary. This is a Merriam-Webster American Dictionary, but this is a visual version. It works in a slightly different way because what you do here, you don't look up a word. You just open the page and you have different topics. They are arranged into different themes. So for example, if I click here on society, so you have different sections. So I clicked on city, and inside the city you have a street. So you have a cross section of a street. So you can see that you have a pronunciation and you have the pictures. And in here you have the name of everything on the picture. So you can click here, you could hear the pronunciation as well. So as I say, it works in a slightly different way, but it shows you the image of all of these words. Okay. You can have some visual dictionaries or some mind maps. So you can give administration, words related to those particular expressions. Okay. And something which is essential, especially if you are, B2 and upwards, is the idea of a collocation. Sometimes, languages are not like math. In math, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and that's it. In a language, especially in English, 2 plus 2 sometimes equals 4, but sometimes you can't add 2 plus 2 for whatever reason. So sometimes you can use the verb make and then a noun, but sometimes you can't use the verb make. You have to use the word do and then a certain noun. Okay, so to know all of these things, if an adjective and a noun go together, or what kinds of verbs typically go with some nouns, you need to know the right collocation. And you have some ideas here. You have this website that helps you find expressions or collocations in real context of use. And the sources are online articles, websites. So this is a database of text. So if you look up an expression, you can see it here, for example. If you want to see how to use the phrasal verb put up with, so you type it here. So you can find it in many different contexts. You can see that this is the source. These are newspapers, for example. This is the website of TV station, American TV station. So if you open it, you can see not just this sentence, but the whole paragraph where it appeared. You can even open the original source. So this is quite useful, actually. Okay. You can also use for example, the Oxford Collocation Dictionary. And as you can see, if you Google a word, or if you look up a word like crime, typically you see a list of adjectives that typically are connected or are used in collocation with the word crime. So a crime can be an appalling crime, an awful crime, bloody crime, despicable crime. Or you can see a list of verbs followed by the word crime. So you carry out a crime, you commit a crime, you report a crime. Okay? So you can see how it works here. These are very, very useful. And then we can't forget grammar, okay? For some of you, this is something you may like, some of you may hate it and may feel that it's pointless. No, it's really useful. And what I would say, whenever you're reading, whenever you're listening to many of these texts and sources I've been mentioning all along, just highlight or make a note and try to see how the grammar rules you've learned in class are applied in real texts. As I say, when you're reading, when you're listening to something, you have your grammar references from the textbooks you're using. You have some specific grammar books that you can use with theory and practice and exercises. You can just go to the internet and you also have lots of, clear explanations and lots of examples to help you improve your grammar. These are just a couple of examples what I've been doing, because I was teaching advanced levels. For example, to illustrate how to use inversions after negative expressions. So again, I have been compiling clips from TV shows and films where people actually use these expressions. In this case, for example, not only do I want to, or not only am I going, whatever. Okay, so this is what I'm doing as a teacher, but if you find these grammar expressions or any grammar expressions you might have seen in class, if you read them, if you listen to them, just make a note of them, and that will help you remember them. Okay, this is something similar for an inversion that happens with some conditional clauses. Again, that's the same premise, that's the same idea. Whenever I find one of these expressions on a TV show, on a podcast, whatever, so I just make a note of them, I clip them, and that way I can share them with my students. But this is something you can do as well. Just make a note in your notebook, just for you to remember that you heard this, and this is actually happening in real contexts of use. Okay? Remember, I mentioned this when we talked about writing. Grammar, as I said, this is something essential, and there are some mistakes, some grammar mistakes that can't be happening at certain levels. So depending on your level, you can have a look at these lists and check, make sure that you really know how to use all these grammar structures and that these mistakes don't happen when you're speaking or when you're writing. I know, of course, that grammar is not the goal in itself. We are not testing your grammar. We haven't tested grammar for years as such. However, it is essential. It is the support for your production and reception as well. Think of it as a human body, okay? You may think of your vocabulary and your all your expressions and the content. This is the meat. This is your muscles and your skin. However, if your grammar, if your bones are not, in perfect shape, if there's a problem with your bones, with your bone structure, then your whole body is going to crumble. You're not going to be able to function properly. Okay? So as I say, think of grammar as the main structure. supporting your whole house, as the pillars of a house. So if your grammar is not correct, then everything's just going to crumble. So these were the main tips that I wanted to share with you. You have been asking some questions in the chat as we were speaking, but anyway, if you have some further questions, you can just write them in the chat now, and I'll try and answer them for you. If you want to make any comments, I'll be happy to read them. So that's all from me. As I said at the beginning, you can find this webinar and the presentation I've been using on my blog. This is the link to my blog. I hope you found something useful. If you can put one or two of these tips into practice next week, I'll be more than happy. I will have done my job, and I hope attending this webinar was worth your time and effort. Thank you for joining, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.